Welcome to Empowering Humility, where we're on a mission to promote human flourishing by restoring humility as a common denominator in society today. Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Empowering Humility podcast. Today, I have Giancarlo Newsome, founder of Empowering Humility, back with us again, but we also have two special guests. Let me try to get your names right. I'm going to really polish on my Italian accent here. Francesco Finazzi and Matteo Mendula.
Bravissimo. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Brandon. Bravissimo. Yes. Very well.
Nailed it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Guys, can you introduce yourself really briefly to our listeners?
So I start. I'm Matteo. I co-founded MynDoor with Francesco. I'm a software engineer. I got my PhD half in Italy, half in the US at the University of Bologna in Italy and at the University of California. And with Francesco, we got a patent. We're going to tell you today from the technical aspect. I'm the tech guy who did the machine learning stuff. And so I have a background, really technical background, not as fancy as the one that Francesco is going to tell you.
No, mine is not fancy, I was saying. Mine is just less technical. That's it. I was a Navy pilot for 14 years, and that's my background before being a startupper. And now I'm co-founder in MynDoor with Matteo. And that's pretty much it, because I'm not so old after all.
Beautiful. Okay, so Matteo, if I'm not mistaken, University of Bologna is the oldest university in the world?
They say so. You know what is funny? I didn't know that before going to the United States. They said, "Oh, you come from the oldest university in the world," and I say, nice to."
We didn't know in Italy.
Okay, fun fact.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Okay, well, maybe that's just a one of those factoids that floats around America that everybody knows, but Italian, it's actually not true. We just say it. Okay. Anyway, good to know. Okay, so what we're talking about today is we're calling this episode "Countering AI with AI: The Power of Humility in Tech and Stress." And what we're talking about today is that a big conversation topic we've had in past episodes, but is also a larger topic within at least American culture. I'll just say that because I'm not as familiar with European culture, but in American culture, it is a growing threat, if you will, or crisis, where you have younger people on their phones, on social media, and there is and because of that, especially in the young age demographic, there is an increase in stress, anxiety, depression, even suicidality, because of the way that social media is presenting themselves to their peers, and their peers are presenting themselves to each other. And how the algorithms, especially within these tech platforms, kind of make that feed or make that presence to them. And so one of the arguments from folks like Tristan Harris and Jonathan Haidt is that it increases anxiety because fear and I'll say greed or envy or some of these other vices, if you will, are amplified on these platforms because of the AI algorithms. So what I want to hear from you guys is, A, is that an accurate summary of the problem that a lot of people are facing, or maybe just the general conversation topic? And B, is there a way that you guys are using AI or some of, even more modern tools, generative AI and things that are happening nowadays, to combat this problem or this crisis? So AI is kind of fighting with AI, if you will. Is that a fair summary? Is that a fair description of what's happening?
Yeah, Brandon. So I completely agree with you. Technology completely changed the way that we interact with each other, and the way that we are producing content, and the way that we are consuming content too at some point, because user profiling was already a big topic in the 90s. Now it's widespread, it is consolidated. The more we consume something, the more we are going to consume it. And this is really linked to the consequences of which content we are consuming, right? The brain is like a stomach. So what you eat makes you, and what you think models your way of thinking. So in a world where narcissism is playing a big role and narcissistic attitude is being driven by the content that we are consuming, the more we are consuming narcissist content, the more we are going to consume it. And since there is a demand, there will be an offer, as in every rule of market, right? So what we tried to do was to use the same technology that is being used for profiling people. Artificial intelligence, deep learning are now really consolidated, right? So on one side, there is a great effort at doing that the best way as possible. Our goal is to use this piece of technology that is consolidated, powerful, now with ChatGPT is really accessible to everybody, to detect cognitive biases in communication that can be written, that can be spoken communication, to highlight what in our communication can be changed in order to shape a better future for human beings.
Very cool. So if I could maybe point a very practical example of maybe what you're describing of this kind of like what you see is you become more of what you see. A very simple example maybe is I have a 2-year-old daughter who loves Moana, the musical Disney movie. Great movie. Highly recommend the music. It's wonderful.
I love it.
She wants to listen to it and see it on YouTube. So I will play it on Spotify for her, and then I'll play it on YouTube for her. But now I'm getting all these feeds that YouTube and Spotify think I want to listen to Moana, but I don't. I want to listen to my music. But because I keep listening to it. Are you sure you don't want to? It is great music. You know, Lin-Manuel Miranda, writing. It's beautiful music. I do love it. But I don't want to listen to it all the time. But because I'm listening to it for my daughter's sake, it's now in my feed, and that algorithm is feeding me more content like that. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Or maybe the algorithm knows yourself better than you.
Better than I know myself. Fair. It's probably true.
Maybe your daughter, they've got something where a daughter clicks on it that says, "Hey, load your parents' feed."
Right? Yeah, I do try to watch YouTube in the in the incognito mode so that it doesn't know. Like I don't want it to pick up on that.
I'm currently listening to Dopamine Nation, and it is very interesting. Just kind of what you were talking about, Brandon and Matteo, like how these addictions, even they're not even necessarily like a drug addiction, obviously too, but like that narcissism, they're actually. She was stating that the wealthiest nations that are consumed in this AI-driven bubble, it's not only like high addictive results, but like physical pain. Like we are in physical pain as a result of this addiction. And I also, just to kind of give context to the audience of how we know each other, a little bit of my own backstory and why I'm so excited about what Matteo and Francesco do with MynDoor. I think we all go through periods and we'll all suffer. I know Jordan Peterson talks about we will all encounter in life massive stress. But what's very interesting, in most of the cases where I encountered traumatic stress, had we caught the signals early, right, that we could have prevented that peak stress event. And I think that's where, I'm really excited to know Matteo and Francesco, because their first AI that's available now, and I'm kind of doing an implicit pitch for them, but it's really exciting how they can. And when I look back in my past, had I had their technology, I am confident we could have caught and prevented some tragic outcomes of stress that built too far in the relational environment that we could never correct. So I just wanted the audience to know kind of why. And then the second part that Matteo brought up was, hey, can we actually identifying stress early is great, but I think one of the biggest problems, and this was, I was going to read the statistic that I just heard from the Epoch Times. Roughly 1 in 5 adults and 6 million children in America today are taking at least one psychiatric drug. Yet the mental health crisis appears to be getting worse, with a growing number of children being prescribed medication at an early age. in other words, it is absolutely helpful to be aware of problematic stress before you recognize it's problematic stress. So they're doing that. That's awesome. I think what's really exciting with this collaboration with Empowering Humility and MynDoor is self-awareness is great. You can maybe figure out what's causing the stress so you can attack it earlier. But what if there's biases or pride, this blindiness from seeing what's causing the stress? So there you go. I thought I'd just kind of jump in, Brandon, and kind of tie how Empowering Humility is tied to MynDoor, and then let Matteo and Francesco now kind of tell us about all their great work.
Yeah, thank you.
Giancarlo, you made the best speech ever. I mean, I should bring it with me every time I present.
Well, you're about to,
I love that.
Francesco's about to talk to some investors, so hopefully, that's helpful.
I don't have you with me, but so I will pull out the phone and make you talk with them. Probably.
I transcribe the speech so you can use it.
Perfect. That's perfect.
So yeah, I completely agree with Giancarlo. Maybe now is a good time for describing better what we did in MynDoor. Starting from the experience as a Navy pilot of Francesco, we collected a data set of everyday diaries, written diaries of people that were isolated from society for research purposes. So there were former pilots, researchers from university research centers, and they have been monitored during a research period, writing everyday diaries and collecting biometrical data from IoT devices like heart rate variability, cortisol level, blood pressure, that at the end form a data set composed of the psychological mental health status of the individual, together with the way that he is expressing himself, describing his idea, choosing words. So based on this data set, we were able to train a large language models, an LLM, very similar to ChatGPT, but with a specific task, not a general purpose task like summarize today's lectures. It's the task in this case is discriminate the way the individual is expressing his thoughts depending on his own mental health. So the idea is that you can communicate the same content, the same meaning in many different ways, right? The words that you choose to communicate that meaning makes you detectable for a text classifier in terms of how good is your mental health at the moment. And this is exactly what we did. So depending on the words that you are choosing to communicate with others, we discriminate, we identify cases of mental stress before physical symptoms, because the way that we communicate with each other is not a physical symptom, right? So before burnout, for example, or before chronic disease, or before any other problems that can arise when stress is already present.
Interesting. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just to actually, what actually Matteo said is everything we are, the reason why we're doing this, and what actually also Giancarlo told earlier about knowing before, just to explain you a little bit of my experience, but I was a Navy pilot. I had experience on myself. I mean, the effect of stress, malaise, and, I saw a lot of time, maybe people that day should not have been doing their job because it wasn't the best day for them to do their job, okay? If we knew before what they were going through, we would help even saving people, probably. So that's the reason why. And then how we reach it, well, Matt already told but much better than me, but the reason is, like you say, guys, is to actually save the people, help people have a better life in the end. That's the point.
Interesting.
Yeah, if we can detect how people are expressing themselves, then we can potentially detect incoming problems in their mental health condition. And that is strictly related with what Giancarlo is currently doing. So at some point we say, why don't we do it together? Because chronic stress is really bounded to narcissism, cognitive biases. Can we apply the same approach that we use for stress that is at the basis of our company, of our proposal to a different context, but still really close to what we are currently doing? And the answer is yes, because it has been proved scientifically in the academia that communication and semantic choices are basically the map that we can use to navigate people's thoughts. We are what we think, we act what we read. That's the reason why people are so advertising reading many books that will change your life, right? Because that shapes the way that you think, not only about the books that you read, but also people that things that happen in your life, everyday life. So this is a topic that is at the border between computer science, natural language processing, psychology, medicine. It's really hard to put people, good people, capable people at the same table and share thoughts, share competences in order to solve this problem. In order to do that, for example, I don't have a psychological expertise, right? So I studied computer science. I know how to train a machine learning model, but I didn't know anything about psychology. So for me, the hardest part of this project was to collaborate with people that are really experts on their specific domain knowledge, but they don't know anything about computer science. They don't know anything about data sets. They don't know what is overfitting. They don't know all the different problems that shape my life. And I didn't know anything from them. So even this journey that started now 7 years ago, 8 years ago, with the collection of the data set and then the processing of the data, that enriched myself as a person, not only as an entrepreneur or a researcher. This is a really great achievement, right? We celebrate one small success at a time. And
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask, what, putting all of this together, you two are building this company, this tech platform. You're doing these collaborations with people that are domain experts in some of these other areas, because this is a complex problem. It's not just technology. It's also self-esteem. There's therapy and psychology, and there's culture, and there's media, consumption habits, and there's just like a whole bunch of different things coming together. What have you learned throughout this process that you've seen maybe has impacted your own life, or if you have any stories of maybe a customer or somebody using this product, or any kind of outcomes that have you seen somebody go through this process and have been helped in some way, either personally or, like I said, like a customer or user, anything like that? Do you have any kind of like outcomes or benefits that you've seen yourself?
Well, yes. I mean, I don't want to do like the commercial pitch, but we know our customer using it are like experience helps, because we are like aggregate anonymous data, and we know the level of stress in their company is decreasing. So this is like a fact, okay? Something you can really touch with your hands. But for my personal point of view, what I try to do every day is to try to understand, are we really bringing value to them? Are we doing our best to bring them value, right? And so we experience the same exercise, because what we do, we give alert when the stress is raising. We give them explanation. We give them also suggestion. And we also provide exercise you can do, like respiration, mindfulness, even take and walk. Okay. So what I try to do is to do the same. I try to do the respiration, the mindfulness, and on myself, right? It worked. It works for me. So that's how I understand if it's also working for the others. And I try in my life to be the best version of me. So I try always to practice these and remember me to acknowledge to myself when I get into my stress, even because the system is telling me, right? So let's acknowledge and do what is needed to decompress. So yes, it's working for my life. But you need, what we notice is that you need to believe it's helpful for you. Otherwise, if you don't believe it, it's difficult for a person to actually embrace the things that if a system tells you you are stressed and then you should take a break, if you don't believe it or if you don't want to listen, there is nothing you can say everything, but you want that because you need to put your effort in it. So we need to do a lot of communication with company, with people to make them understand the stress, malaise in general is a problem. And you need to acknowledge it and then take action. We need to do a lot of communication in that field.
Well, and that's where I think humility is the root to acknowledging, hey, I want to know more. One of my favorite parallels for what you do is it's kind of like you kind of are giving people a set of glasses for their stress. The paradox is some people may not like, if you show me, if I can see better stress that's coming, I now have to deal with it. And it can be a little bit scary to kind of maybe dig into that. And again, back to, okay, well, what's the virtue that gives us the power? And that's why we call it empowering humility to deal with stress is humility. But and you mentioned the corporate context, maybe, a couple of thoughts I'd love to hear your thoughts on is, I think it's the same challenge with working with some of our corporate partners and friends is, okay, so we can give you an early indication of developing stress in your organization. What do you do with that? So maybe I see kind of the paradox where some would say, I'd rather not know. What's your thoughts about that? Maybe even managing privacy with some of our corporate clients?
Yeah, so from my point of view, the journey that we did, it changed the lifestyle of people that are using our product, but changed our life maybe more. Now I'm really more aware of how I express myself. Maybe you don't have time to reply. Maybe you got a bad day, right? You write the first message that comes to your mind. And this project with Francesco and with Giancarlo made me realize that it's not just a matter of what I'm saying, it's a matter of how do I express myself. I'm not just giving a message with the meaning of my words, but I'm communicating with the tone of my voice, I'm communicating with my gesture. We, as Italian, are really well known for gesture. That's really important. It's part of our communication. And if I'm saying something that has to be really objective, right, with no shadows, with no critics to you, I have to say that really frankly, with a gentle tone of the voice, firmly, yes, but without making you feel that I don't like you or that my problems now are your problems because I simply had a bad day. If a large language model can identify this, then a human being can definitely do it. So I'm really more aware of how I'm communicating with friends, people, colleagues.
I have a proposal. English is kind of like one of the main languages, but one of the fun statistics I heard from Matteo and Francesco to share that I think is really funny and hilarious, and is my recommendation to maybe make Italian the next generation leading language of the world, is that the statistics,
may be difficult.
The quality. But here's a really funny statistic just about Italian color. We can try. This is the Italian sort of my Italian American.
It's going to be
that the quality
is definitely going to be convenient for us, but maybe not for everybody else.
I support it.
Well, but to encourage learning Italian and communicating Italian, the model is actually more precise in its accuracy for Italian over English. Is that still the case, Matteo? And then I'm sorry, Brandon, I cut you off.
Yeah, this is still an issue at the moment, to be fair, mainly because we are Italian, right? So we injected the right knowledge into the model, but it's still slightly more efficient. This is more a joke than a performance comparison. The English version has the 84.7% of accuracy. The Italian has the 85.2. But still, we are not able to beat the Italian version.
I love that. So I was going to summarize, if I could. So from what I have understood from this conversation is that you looked at this data set of pilots who were isolated from society and what was going on in their mind. They were, feeling a sense of stress or emotional distress, feeling maybe some depression. And they were writing in their journals the things that they were communicating about themselves and how they were feeling. And you use this to create or to train a large language model to understand how people are feeling in order that they can be prompted before burnout, before depression, before having this emotional distress, that they're going through something and that it can help them counteract some of those feelings or sensations by doing some kind of, if I could say, mindfulness practices like breathing or meditation or journaling, exercise even. And that by you guys even working on this problem, you yourselves have felt more mindful and had much better mental health, even physical health. And as a result, you think that this tool can help other people mitigate those kinds of things. Is that an accurate summary of what you guys are doing?
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. And that helps me to describe a bit an additional concept. So the model works. It was initially trained on pilots, but then there was an important part of our job that was to transfer the knowledge that we acquired on a research environment to a real world environment.
Gotcha.
So we had to translate the semantics and the word choices made by pilots in a research isolated environment to an environment, everyday environment where we currently live right now, right?
Yes.
So there was a process called transfer learning that has been done in collaboration with a really good team of psychological experts that supported us at doing this. And so we worked really closely with them. We basically worked with them doing their job with our model to support what they were currently doing with our model. And we realized by doing that it's much more important to identify when a critical situation is going to arise than to intervene even with better solutions when it's too late. Maybe 30 minutes reading, 30 minutes working in your garden at the right time are better off 1 week of therapy. If it's already too late, then the damage is done, right? So this is our main powerful addition to the market.
Have you guys looked at, like with some of your corporate clients, I think it'd be amazing to see if there's a reduction in medical or medicine pharmacy claims for mental prescriptions.
That will be a great case study actually to prove. Yeah, absolutely. We are starting to work at the moment because we started 1 year ago pretty much with the first product. So we are now starting to work with corporates. Yeah. But we don't have yet this case study. I mean, it will be great to prove it, of course, and it's a great suggestion. Actually, it is.
Yeah, we are now starting to add the data in order to validate these kind of assumptions, and in order to do that in a more controlled environment, let's say, to certify the capability of our proposition, we are trying to get the certification as a medical device of the algorithm. This is a long journey because it has to be invalidated in clinical settings with doctors, with a controlled environment where other metrics are collected. So, for example, EEG, those signals from your brain, basically, are an additional indicator that can be helpful to support the outcome of our model. So basically, you take all those different inputs, EEG, blood pressure, heart rate variability. From each of them, you get a conclusion. That can be the subject is stressed 30%, 20%. And then you sum up, you do what we call an assembling of outcomes, and you are able to have a much precise and much more accurate outcome of the detection. This is what we are currently doing with an hospital in Italy, one of the big hospitals in Italy. We are going to get the first letter of intent to co-produce a new version of our algorithm to do the validation and to get the medical certification for the device that we are going to ship as a new product for the healthcare, for the military, for those people in hazard conditions, in petrol gas station in the middle of the ocean, for example, where the possible damage, it's not very likely, but it has a great damage, right? So we want to minimize probability multiplied by damage.
Amazing.
Wow.
Okay.
Well said.
Last question for you all, and I know, Francesco, you got to go talk to some investors. So in one sentence, what would you say after all of your experience in building this technology, in one sentence, what is the one thing you would recommend to listeners to improve their mental health or their humility or de-stressing themselves? What would you recommend?
Acknowledgement. I mean, acknowledgement is just when you acknowledge your state, you acceptance. So you accept there is something not wrong, but something you need to act about, right? You need to think about and then act. That's the first step. If you don't acknowledge it, if you don't want to accept it, there's nothing you can do it.
Love that.
Yeah, I agree.
Love that.
I was going to just throw in a selfless plug. After you acknowledge it, the Empowering Humility app is a great place to journal your introspection. So if you are getting these signals of these high levels of stress from like the MynDoor app, you're like, well, and you kind of know these are things I want to dig into, and I don't want to forget about it. I want to work on these things. I want to see progress. And when you overcome something you've acknowledged, you can flip that to a praise. And so we've built our app to specifically help that. So I know it's kind of a shameless plug, but anyhow, thanks, Brandon. I'll let you wrap it up.
No, you're right. You're right, Jack.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so where can people find you guys? MynDoor.it, is that the right website?
Both.com or IT, if you are in Italy, but if you're not, .com works, yeah. Yes, absolutely,
Awesome.
on the website.
Awesome. Okay, MynDoor.com, MynDoor.com.
Exactly.
Please check them out. And then, of course, check out empoweringHumility.com. And we will see you all on the next episode. We'll see you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure.
Thanks,
It
Brandon.
was a pleasure.